In this part, we're going to be talking about the brush tool. So to select the brush tool, the quick key is B for brush. And when you select the brush tool, that's this tool right here. And some other quick key functions that are very helpful that you're going to be using all the time are the bracket keys. So first, just using the bracket keys on their own, the bracket right key, these are the keys that are underneath the plus minus button and the the plus equal button. So bracket right, again, I just hit that a couple times. You can see I'm making my brush bigger. Bracket left, I'm making my brush smaller. And then another thing to understand with the bracket keys are that if you hold shift while you are using the bracket keys, notice that the edge of the brush will get softer or more precise. Now if you use shift and bracket right, it will make the edge sharper, more precise, and shift and bracket left, it will, it will do that in increments of 20 basically. So if you watch like, the hardness on here, it will go up like 20, 40, 60, 80 or whatever, but like when you're doing it, with the shift bracket keys. So again, just watch here, and I'm gonna just zoom into that real quick so you can kind of see, again, shift bracket right, shift bracket left, and just hitting it a couple times. And again, you can, when you have the brush tool selected, when you're in your default tools, you can click on this and this will launch, different, your brush options basically. Or, I like to keep brush options, kind of preloaded in my tool set. And then again, you could always go to window and click on brushes and brush settings to control the settings of brushes as well. But it's very helpful to know that bracket right makes it bigger, bracket left makes it smaller. Now the brush is a tool that comes into play in a lot of different other tools, right? So even though this is just the brush tool, a lot of these functions like making it bigger or smaller comes into play in even in Illustrator. But let's say when you're using the direct selection tool, you can see my direct selection tool here, quick key W. If I go bracket right, it'll make it bigger, and bracket left will make it smaller. And same thing with bracket, shift bracket right, it makes it more precise or softer. But again, I'm gonna go back to B, to the brush tool, so we don't get too far off that. And I actually want a soft edge brush, so I actually held shift and bracket left till it's the softest 0% hardness basically, because the first application of the brush I want to use it for is shadows. This is a great tool for creating your own shadows. Now, using the brush tool, you need to get used to it, so I'm just going to show you a couple applications quickly in this tutorial, and we'll dive into more advanced stuff as we move along. So I have this tomato. It is masked in this shape so that it appears as if it's in the bowl. Basically it's in this folder, so anything in this folder, I'm just going to activate this selection by holding command and clicking on the mask, so you can see the selection of the mask in relation to the rest of the image. If I hold down option and click on the mask, you can see the mask in relation to, like, black and white, how that looks. Just hold option and click on it again. That's just ways of previewing your mask or seeing where it is in relation to the rest of your image. So anything I do in this mask is going to stay kind of looking like it's in this bowl. But I want to add a layer in front of this tomato, because I'm going to use the brush tool to make a shadow. So I'm actually going to default my colors to black and white. Now if you really want to do realistic shadows, you'll probably try to color, pick like the darkest area of the color you're doing it on, and then just drag it down in this color picker so that it's like, it's not black necessarily, but it's a really dark version of that color, because realistically that will be more accurate than just doing like a black. But when you're doing shadows, especially for phase 1 explorations, you could just do black when you're quickly making your own shadows. But I'm just going to take this tool, and just so you can see, if I click and hold my click down and just drag it, that's what happens with my brush tool. And I can adjust these settings in my brush settings, and basically the space that I have between this, watch what happens to the space of the brush, or the edge of this brush I should say. If I take that spacing down to 0, you can see it like fills in a lot more. It's kind of like weird. So when I use a soft brush, I like to keep it at that default setting of about 25% spacing, and that creates like a nice, simple, smooth brush. And now I'm in the mask, but I'm gonna paint under the lip here, so it kind of appears like there's like, you know, I'm adding some shading to this tomato, and I'm kind of coming close to the lip. You can see what I'm doing. I can go back and add it to other areas. But right now I'm adding it, and it's going into the bowl too. You can embed this or clip that just so it affects the tomato. And there I have like a nice little shadow coming off it. That's kind of dark, so if I want, I can scale back the opacity on it so it's not so severe. I'll turn it on and off so you can see. And there, you know, blending modes you can use to make it look more realistic, picking up the colors of the background like multiply and linear burn. We'll get into the blending modes another time, but for now, that's just one quick application of using the brush. Next, I'm going to put a little shadow behind it. So I'm going to click, again, I'm still, you know, this tomato is in this folder, so if I hide this folder, it hides everything in it. I want to add a layer behind the tomato, so when I'm clicking on it, if you hold Command and then click on this Add Layer button, it will add it below. So I'm going to do that, and then I have a new layer below it, and again, I still have my soft brush here, and I still have this dark red, and I'm just going to kind of like click a couple places back here, so it feels like that's the shadow coming from the tomato. So again, just using the brush tool, and again, I'll change this to like a linear burn so it picks up some of that color back there. And again, if you feel it's too dark, you can lower the opacity here. You can either type a value, or you can click on where it says opacity. Anytime there's a value like this next to it, you roll over it, and that means you can slide, you know, treat it like a slider, and you can see my shadows getting lighter or darker depending on, you know, how I move it. But again, just simple brush tool, and that gives me some nice, like, kind of realistic looking shadows for the front, and, you know, just it's sitting in the bowl. So that is, like, you know, really like a quick introduction to the brush tool. I'm going to show you two more things with it, you know, other ways to use it. But again, this brush feature works in other tools too, not just the brush tool. You are going, when I refer to brushing, sometimes we're using the actual brush tool, but sometimes I'll say, you know, okay, use the brush here while we're in the quick selection tool. But the brush tool itself, you know, again, just creating simple shapes for shadows, that's easy. So I'm going to hide this now, and I'm going to show you, actually I can keep that showing for now, but I'm gonna hide the group, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new layer just above everything that's showing right now. And just so I can show you another way that I like to use this is, let's say I take a larger brush, soft brush still, you know, I can make the edge a little bit more precise by holding Shift right bracket, but really for now the soft one is fine. And I'm just gonna paint one. I'm just gonna click once, and you can see I have this, you know, if I hide everything, you can see that's basically what I have, right? Just a soft one brush click, and that's easy, right? Well, that in itself can be a shadow. So I'm going to take this layer and move it behind the bowl, and I'm going to go to my move tool, which is the one that looks like a little crossbar there. And I am going to, if I want to do non-destructive editing, I could actually turn this to a smart object. For this purpose, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to move it down a little bit so you can see it's like behind the bowl, but I'm actually going to transform it. So I'm going to hit Command T to launch these transform tools, and if I hold down Option and Shift in Photoshop CC 2020, you can see I'm just, and I'll move this over here so you can see I'm just kind of squishing this you know, brush mark that I made before, so it has kind of like a perspective that feels like the shadow of this bowl. And then, you know, again, depends on how much shadow you actually want to show. I can, you know, maybe drag the sides out a little bit more. But all I did was take one brush, clicked it once, and then transformed it into this really realistic looking shadow for the bowl now. As simple as that. And when you're doing detailing and things, you can even go farther than that. And let's say, you know, I just like really squish it down to like something that's like almost just like a sliver detail of something. When I'm creating like imagery, I can you know, use just a simple tool like that, like the brush tool, and then transform it into be, you know, like this faded kind of like sliver graphic. But I'm going to go back because that was easy. So that's the second thing. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is sometimes you use the brush tool for lighting effects. So I am going to show this onion, and I'll hide everything else just to make it easy to see. But I am going to add a new layer above this onion, and I'm going to embed it just so it only affects the onion. But on this layer, I'm going to change it to overlay. And now I can use my brush tool B, again, if I wasn't in the brush tool. Again, I'm going to use it with a soft edge to the brush, make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to default my colors to black and white. Now this overlay blending mode, when you paint black and white in an overlay blending mode, it works kind of like the dodge and burn tool from like Illustrator, versions of the past. But what it does is it kind of highlights, it lightens areas of the color, but still maintains that color value. So watch, when I use white, it'll lighten it, and when I use black, it will darken it. So I'm just going to use white first. So you can see white is my foreground color. Whatever you're using in the brush, whatever color you're painting with your brush, that has to be the foreground color. So because I want to paint white, and again, I'm in this overlay layer, watch what happens. It basically adds like a super crazy highlight. But I don't want it to be that dramatic, so I'm going to take my opacity down to 20. And when you're using the brush tool and you want to change the opacity quickly, if you use your number keys, 1, 2, 3, 4, watch when I hit 1 up here, you see that changes to 10%. And again, I'll just kind of zoom in so you can kind of see. If I hit 2, it's 20%, 3, 30%. So you can quickly change the value of your opacity just by doing that. And even if you type in like 34, then it will go to 34 or 45 or 63, whatever you want to type in, it will enter that value up here. But I'm going to go to like 20% because I want to like see how that lighting affect that overlay, and I'm going to click it a couple times. So now you can see I just added this nice little light spot here, and then if I switch my colors to black is the foreground color, and when I have my colors here, if I have one of the colors I want and I want to flip them, X will flip the colors. And then, maybe some of these darker bits, I want to bring out the color there. So you can see I'm just painting black and white, and I'm going to change this layer from overlay to normal. And then I'm going to release it and hide the onion. So you can see all I did was paint like some black, and it was at 20%, so it's not fully black. It's just a grayscale. And the white, you can barely see the white, but there's some white here. And then, again, just the way that is affecting the layer, because I had it on overlay, it adds, it dramatizes the color in this basically. So again, I'm going to add some black here, and you can see it's like really just dramatizing the colors that are already there. And then if I add white, again, X to switch my colors, it's kind of, adding like a value of that color, but a lighter value. So it almost like adds like these like light spots or light burst spots. And I'm just doing it in 20% and clicking a couple times, but if I want, I could go to 60% and click, or like 80% and click, and again, you can see. So this is just using the brush tool to add some lighting and shading and really just depth of color effects to this food item. So again, that's just the intro to the brush tool, and things that you should always remember about it, like again, the brackets right and left makes it bigger and smaller, and shift brackets makes this kind of harder or softer on the edges. So again, just watch shift bracket right will make this edge here more precise, and shift bracket left makes it softer. And that is the gist of the brush tool. Also, one other thing before I finish, again, you can click this little caret here, and there's brush options that you can choose, and you can always go into your brush settings and choose options there as well. But a quick way when you're using the brush to select things too is just to hold Control and click anywhere in your live window, or right click if you have your right click working and featured. But watch when I hit Control and click there, then it launches that same thing. So if I want to work quickly and I don't want to go back up here, which is the whole point of these quick keys, is that I don't have to click up here and change the precision or the size of the brush, right? That's why I'm using my quick keys in the first place. I can just hold Control, click, get the same options, and then to get out of this dialog box, just hit Escape, or you click on whatever you click on, and then just start brushing. and then it'll get rid of the dialog box also. But that's it for the brush tool for now, for the intro. Thanks.